Well, hello. Once again, it is the EXiles podcast.
As I was walking
That's so funky.
I am so glad to be here.
Here we are once again, La Divina Italian Cafe at Acadian and Perkins.
And discount mask sales.
Still not open for dine-in, but will be come Saturday morning. Come Saturday morning.
Oh, God. A bad group with a bad song.
Now, we're going to get some answers to some of these questions and get some clarification on what we can and cannot do starting on Saturday morning because we're going to be talking with Darryl Gissel with the mayor's office coming up in just a few minutes. But meanwhile, we want to thank those of you who have tuned in for the television show. We got big response to EXiles TV yesterday. We had a pretty big lineup on the show. And if you missed it, you can check it out on, go to our Facebook page. Go to the page you're on now. You'll see a link to YouTube where you can watch yesterday's EXiles TV. But some interesting stuff from Mike Steele with GOSEP, and talked to Brian Trasher, who's kind of an insider in Washington. Mm-hmm. And we also had a fascinating chat with, I've forgotten our first hour.
Brian Johnson.
Brian said, I got to be honest with you, Brian told us some things that I already knew about the mortgage industry coping with COVID-19. But did you know if you need to close on a refi or a purchase, they'll actually come out to your car, rain or shine, and if you don't want to electronically sign, they'll physically take your signature, and you can still sit in your car safely. They'll go back inside and get your check if you're selling, or if you're taking some cash out at refi, and come back out and deliver you your check. They're bending over backwards to be able to continue to do mortgage business. It's amazing.
That's because they're so flexible.
Yep.
But anyway, did you? We had to take Brian Johnson via FaceTime video call.
Yeah, that was a first.
And he was on my iPad sitting next to me, and the camera was over my shoulder. Did you notice? I can't remember. I've been racking my brain. There was a Twilight Zone episode because the way the light was hitting the screen,
I could see your reflection.
My face was at about 30%. It was hovering in over him, and it was eerie.
We could see right up your nose.
But I liked it. Well, a good thing I trimmed the nose hair yesterday morning.
We could, right up his nose.
Personal hygiene is always very important when you're doing television.
It was pretty cool. It was an impromptu thing. Now, eventually down the road, we're going to be set up to do Skype and Zoom and FaceTime and things like that and do it more conventionally, split screen, insert into screen, picture-in-picture, that sort of thing.
I saw something very, very interesting, or heard it actually this morning. A behavioral psychologist. They spend a lot of time in workplaces trying to help you with efficiency and solve conflicts and things like that. They're very highly skilled people. They are studying Zoom fatigue. And I've seen this. Karen has been working from home, and of course she's vice president of a national organization, the National Audubon Society. She's the executive director for Louisiana. And they have probably done 8 to 10 meetings a week over Zoom. She did her board meeting over Zoom yesterday. Mm-hmm. And everybody at the beginning goes, this is so great, this is wonderful, we might want to do this forever. And now they're like, well, the box didn't light up when that guy was speaking, and, I don't feel connected. And they're talking about how
honeymoon's over, baby.
Oh, and particularly people that are like homeschooling and all that, and somebody wants to do a Zoom visit with them, and it ends up being longer than it needs to be because, hey, Tony, how are you? I'm fine, Bill. I see Darryl's on. How's Darryl? And what you're doing is you're eating up the clock, and productivity because of Zoom is going down.
Mm-hmm. What Marianne does, and I think this is very wise, they have, every afternoon, they have a general staff meeting with. She works for Gulf Coast Bank and Trust Mortgage. And at the end of the day, getting near the close of the business day, they all get together and they have a meeting. But they use GoToMeeting, and they're sick and tired of having to look at each other in real time. Not out of any enmity, any spite or anything like that, but it's just like when you work from home, you kind of let yourself go just a wee bit. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to put on makeup and fix your hair.
Karen has been getting...
So they use a still photograph avatar, and then they just talk.
Well, we do conference calls every morning from the mayor's office, and that works fine, too.
Yeah.
It's,
I don't need to see what your face looks like right now.
It's gotten to be kind of funny because Karen, at the very beginning of this, Karen believes in a very professional atmosphere. And she said, all right, I am going to dress every day like I'm going to the office. and her colleagues
From the waist up.
her colleagues have been giving her a real bad time about, Karen, you got on jewelry and makeup, and she said yes, and do you not know who you're talking with here? Now, the one thing she does have as an accessory now is our big dog, the big boxer pit bull mix, likes to sit behind her on the chair and put her head over Karen's shoulder so she's in the shot. So Karen has a dog in the shot usually. Anyway, Zoom is an interesting thing, but
It's a new toy, basically, right?
It's great technology,
Yeah.
but like anything else, it's kind of like when you first learned to text.
Right.
And all your friends are like, stop texting me!
Right,
You're
right.
texting me every 5 minutes, Franz! Stop texting me! Darryl Gissel is the Chief Administrative Officer for the City-Parish government. Darryl, I know you all have been busy. What's the situation like in the parish right now in terms of reopening, in terms of what our financial projections look like, as opposed to things that you're going to have to handle with the federal government, maybe the state
Right.
government to get whole? Give us the overview. What's happening?
We're working diligently right now on the reopening of city-parish government. The intention right now, we haven't fully unveiled the plan, but the intention right now is to reopen city government, have the employees come back start on the 16th. We have some people who shift work on weekends, and then have everybody back in the buildings starting on Monday, and then not open to the public until Wednesday to give employees 2 days just to get resituated, make sure people can social distance correctly, and have all the safety measures put in place. A lot of apprehension, I think, on part of all employees about how do we come back and how do we work safely. So that's going on right now. A lot of emphasis on trying to make employees feel comfortable. The hit, what we estimate for city-parish government, our operating budget, our general fund budget is about $317 million. We think we lose about 7% of that revenue. So about $23 million is what we estimate right now.
That's not as bad as I might have thought, actually.
Well,
I know it's bad.
Right.
But
Those numbers are fluid. Finance team and city-parish government really is an amazing group. They've done their projections. Dr. Richardson at LSU always is the economist who vets our numbers. He feels like that's a safe range for us to be within. We think it could go up to $25 million. Most of that loss is from sales tax revenue, gaming revenue, occupational licenses, things like that. But the largest hit is going to be on sales tax. And realizing 61% of all city-parish revenue comes from sales tax. So, I was thinking this morning, a lot of people, when we talked about red light cameras before, they say, oh, this is a money grab on the part of
Yes,
a
they
public
do, sir.
body. But when you look at this, if we were trying to have a money grab on sales tax, we would have kept everything open. So this is one of those cases where public health is coming ahead of a financial interest.
Well-
and we say the same with red light cameras, that it's a safety move. It's not just a move to grab money.
But you talk about bringing employees back. I mean, I don't think people understand the smaller expenses that are incremental because they continue. I am sure you are going to have to do some type of extreme cleaning in their workspaces, much more than regular
Exactly.
janitorial.
Right.
You're going to have to do like the ionizing spray and all.
Right.
Well, there's maybe a $60 per night cost on that.
Well,
and it keeps
that-
rolling.
The cleaning of facilities has been ongoing, realizing that we have kept people in place. We've had essential workers really in every department. So outside of City Hall is one of the buildings, for instance, their phone number's posted. So if you can't go in, their phone number's where you can get access to what you need.
Any thought to the people that have been able to telecommute or do work from home? Are you going to let them continue to work from home?
Only if there's some special need. We know we have some employees who may have health issues where they're still concerned about coming in, so it's going to be done on a case-by-case basis. And I think every employer is kind of going through that same thing.
Well, we were hearing at the beginning of this, this working from home is not so bad. I may not need as much office space whenever
Right.
this is all over.
Right.
And now I think we're coming down the backside of that parabola, where a lot of people are saying, yes,
Good
work
word.
can get done from home,
Right.
but we still need the inter-office communication face-to-face, the conversations that we have at work that you don't have when people are working at
Right.
home. But Brian Johnson predicted yesterday, and I think he's right, is that commercial office space, new buildings or purchases, is going to be down at the bottom of this gully for a while people are sorting that out.
Right. But one thing that the national is a realtor, by trade. Some of the prognosticators have thought that what's going to happen is people have to social distance in workplaces. In some cases, you're going to have to expand the number of square feet that you have per worker. Because, up to this point, they've tried to consolidate where people are working in small cubicles really close together. So anybody's guess in terms of where we're going to go from here.
But if there's a cue ball between you and the coworker, aren't you kind of protecting each other from it?
In theory, but it still goes back to the social distancing, I think, that people are concerned about at this point.
I think the problem that we all have, and it's not just Baton Rouge, not just Louisiana, it's everywhere, is that we have had a lot of folks that have really, really been terrified by this. And I think that everybody, every business owner, every governmental agency is going to have to deal with certain people that are going to be almost to the point of paranoia about returning to their workspace.
Right.
And we're going to get to a point where accommodations can no longer be made, and then it gets to be very, very difficult for the administrator, for the employer. And I sympathize with a lot of these people. There are a lot of these people that are very, 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 very worried.
Right.
And they think correctly so that the information changes daily, and
It
they
does.
may not want to return.
And what we're doing, because I'm in the middle of this rollout, we've notified employees of the comeback date. Today or tomorrow, we're going to be doing a welcome back letter that explains all the precautions and safety measures we'll put in place for employees. We'll have a policy manual that will go out on how we're moving forward. And then when employees return on Monday, we're going to have Dr. Gabi, who's a medical director for EMS, who's going to do a video explaining to people how the disease, the virus works and what we're doing to protect people. The mayor will be circulating among all the departments on Monday and Tuesday to try and make people feel comfortable being back.
We had him on this program 2.5 weeks ago, and he's very inspirational, and he's a very no-nonsense kind of physician.
Exactly.
What's the biggest obstacle as we go forward? We eventually know that we have to get back to full speed.
Right.
What's the biggest obstacle?
Well, I think one of the obstacles is how do we make those decisions? For instance, we're wrestling with the issue that came up the other day from the people in Kenilworth, for instance, who had the 4th of July parade. Do they move forward with their plans or do they pull back? So the question is, at what point do we start moving forward and have everybody feel comfortable with those decisions?
Do they have any idea what kind of a threshold are they going to be looking for before our city's many watering holes can reopen? I mean, bars by their nature, you're kind of standing shoulder to shoulder.
Exactly.
Are they going to be looking for a vaccine? What kind of a benchmark is being discussed?
I think part of what everyone's looking at are those numbers in terms of testing and where are we? Are we seeing increases or decreases? The prison, for instance, where we've monitored the health issue there, it's kind of like a nursing home where people are close together. We had X number of people who tested positive. The people who are positive are now testing negative, and the number of new cases is greatly diminished. So we feel like we're out of the water there. And the same thing will happen within the general community.
I am very, very pleased that Mayor Broome has not reacted as, in my opinion, dramatically as Mayor Cantrell has in New Orleans.
Right.
I do think that Mayor Cantrell is likely to kill off a big part of their biggest industry, which is tourism. And I know that Baton Rouge markets very hard, and Mayor Broome has always been a big supporter of marketing our city. And Paul Arrigo and his staff do a hell of a job.
Right.
And I'm sure eventually we will be talking to him about these very same things, but do we see any opportunities as the largest metropolitan area to maybe try to capitalize on what seems to be a misstep made by New Orleans as we go forward?
Well, I think what we're looking at is, we have a lot of tourist attractions in Baton Rouge that in many cases I think our local constituency, they don't fully understand or appreciate what we have. Probably always typical. You don't know what's in your own backyard. So I think during the summer when we have issues where summer camps are closed and people are trying to find out what to do to entertain themselves and entertain their children, we have the ability to highlight all of our assets. We're working closely with Paul and with Lieutenant Governor on trying to do just that.
we have kind of a unique situation with our home rule charter and the city parish government, where we have a lot of governmental agencies that actually don't work for you. They're their own government.
Exactly.
But I mean, what's the communication like? I'm very fortunate. I was appointed to the airport commission at the beginning of the year.
Right.
And I know at the airport that they are staying in contact with the council and with the mayor's office about trying to make sure these airlines comply with their agreements to come back and keep serving us, you know, with the best service. We were on an all-time high in January and February until this happened. But is BREC, are they communicating saying, look, you know, we may reconsider whether or not we're going to cancel all summer camps?
Mm-hmm.
Are they, you know, we've got a lot of these little entities.
Right.
Are they in good, close communication with you all saying it's fluid, we're not going to make pronouncements?
Right. I have to say, I think that I've spent most of my time during this whole pandemic trying to do just that. We have all the groups. We have not only the independent taxing districts, but we have the constitutional offices.
Yep.
We have lots of entities, and it's been a matter of trying to stay in contact to touch base, but not to infringe on how they operate. So I think if there's a good part of this period, I think it's pulled a lot of those groups closer together, where we feel that how we're interconnected.
What are you hearing, if anything, from the other cities that may be in similar situations? Again, Lafayette is a city parish government, I believe.
Right, it is.
We know what kind of information we're getting out of Orleans Parish. Are you hearing anything from some of these other entities whose situations may be similar to ours?
Right. We belong to the LMA, Louisiana Municipal Association, and so we do have communication with the different city managers. I've been in touch with those groups. I think the biggest discussion among these groups is how are we going to handle financial issues going forward.
That is going to be the big discussion.
You know, you have a few cities where they have actually let their employees go and told them to collect unemployment, and then they'll bring them back. I think the one thing about city employment or public service, we know that the salaries within the public sector are not what they can be or what they usually are in the private sector. Our salaries are usually lower. But this is a period where people have to understand that the beauty of public service is there's a service component, but in a time like this, normally you're still going to collect a paycheck. So we have a hiring freeze in place. And so that's one of the ways we think we can cut some of our costs, is trying to pull back on our workforce as much as we can.
A government the size of ours, and to not too much of a lesser extent, Lafayette's, Orleans Parish, you have retirements almost continually now because you've got people that have been working in city parish government for 25, 30 years. Have there been a lot of retirements during this kind of stand-down period?
No.
No.
We haven't seen that yet. I think that may come as some people who may be older are concerned about returning to the workplace. And the hiring freeze gives us the ability, if layoffs in city government are a little tough because civil service is in place. So if we go to lay you off, you may have the rights to bump somebody else. It gets very complicated in terms of how do you do that. But the beauty of the hiring freeze is if we have a vacancy, we can move someone else into that position who we may be able to reduce the workforce. But we have the ability with the hiring freeze to move people around and cut our costs.
During this time, has there been any diminishment of or any problems with city services, like especially some of the ones you contract out, like trash?
No, I think
recyclables.
The Republic, which handles our waste management, the issue they've had is with restaurants closed and kids home from school, the volume of trash at residents has gone through the roof, and we've been able to keep up with it.
I have noticed that Monday is usually trash day, and sometimes.
Of the trash bin on one of those giant trucks. And everybody was running. Hair was on fire. But I mean, it just, wear and tear on these trucks, and
right.
you get a lot of liquid residue in the bottom of your trash receptacles.
They've actually had to bring extra employees who were affected by the virus, so they've had to bring extra workers in too.
Let me mess with.
That seems to be back now.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
A little switch problem. But generally speaking, and I mean, I know this calls for some speculation, how has Baton Rouge behaved during this? Have we been pretty circumspect and considerate of our neighbors? Like, I don't think we've had a big increase in traffic citations and things like that.
No.
I don't think the police have had a lot of calls for
No,
service.
I think overall we've done very well. We've monitored domestic violence, we've monitored crime. I think we've done very well. I think that everyone's very pleased with the public response.
You haven't had to break up too many street parties or
No.
anything. That happened early on, but I guess that
Right.
everybody.
And the way the
decided to
police
fly
have
right.
handled that, we've had a lot of questions over the police going to go out and give citations. The police have basically gone out very respectfully and asked people if they would abide by the executive order in place, and for the most part, people have very voluntarily complied.
Yeah, Deputy Chief Dunham told us that
Right.
when they've gone out and explained the situation,
Right.
a lot of people said, "Oh, I didn't know."
Right.
Right. How are you getting? Are you getting any feedback from some of these walk-in businesses? Not La Divina, because that's a restaurant, but next door they have a boutique that have shut their doors and now realize the last 5 days that as long as they had an exterior entrance,
Right,
they
they
could have
cannot-
been
yeah,
open,
right.
and as long as they had no more than 10 people inside, they could have been open.
Right.
These people, some of them are hopping mad, and they've lost a lot of revenue, and the City-Parish has lost a lot of revenue because of that. Are you getting any feedback from them?
Haven't heard that yet.
I,
And I think a lot of businesses voluntarily decided they wanted to close because they wanted to protect themselves and their workers. I think people are concerned about, do you have a libelous situation if you expose people in an unsafe manner? One thing I might want to add, Bill, is we've talked about the impact on city-parish revenue. The one thing we're have the benefit of, City-Parish has financed their houses in good order. We do have financial reserves. We can make it through this. The issue is if we pull down our reserves, we have to replenish those. The plan of government requires that we keep certain reserves on hand.
bucket always has to be half
Yeah,
full.
and we're also approaching hurricane season. So we are going to have to do a lot of financial maneuvering. Under our plan of government, it's up to the mayor to make certain that the reserves are in place and that our finances are in good stead. So that's going to be the mayor's job moving forward, to make sure that we can tighten the reins and do what we need to do. And to get ahead of that, we do have a hiring freeze in place. Over the last 3 years, we've done a lot of efficiency moves within city government. We know where there are pockets that we can tighten up. Usually it takes a long time to put those efficiency moves in place. Some of those moves we weren't able to take credit for in the 2020 budget. So we have those efficiency moves that will help us get through this.
It's before we let you go. It is census time. Everybody's gotten their census forms in the
Right.
mail. Some of us are getting the reminder phone calls. Hey, would you please fill out your
Exactly. I
form? You
think
haven't
I've
done it
gotten
yet."
those.
How are we going to do in the census? I mean, I would hope we would show something of a net gain, because
Right.
it's going to make us make a little more federal
Absolutely.
funding available
Absolutely.
to us.
And we're being aggressive about that all across the parish, trying to make certain we get those forms in.
But we don't know whether we've had a population shift or not yet, do we?
No.
Darryl Gissel is the Chief Administrative Officer for the City-Parish government of East Baton Rouge and the City of Baton Rouge. And, Darryl, it's always good to have you on with us.
Thank
and,
you. It's always good to be here.
Please tell the folks that are with you on the third floor that we know this has not been an easy time, but we feel that they've
No.
done a pretty darn good job.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're going to take a
Thanks.
quick break and get a little coffee and maybe a little pit stop. And when we come back, let's talk about elections and polling and how is COVID-19 affecting major decisions to be made by voters this fall. Pollster John Kuvion will be our guest in just moments here.
Stick around.
It's the EXiles.